First off, we unscrew the tempered glass window, remove it and detach the side panel. Next, we disconnect the top cover by pushing the 4 pegs on each side outwards, followed by removing the cover, carefully minding the I/O panel. Before we continue working on the front cover, we need to take out the lower air filter. In order to reach the lower mount of the front cover more easily, it's advisable to remove the HDD double cage first, followed by undoing the 8 latching pegs, which frees the front cover. For a less cluttered working environment, we remove the LED and accessory boxes and then focus on the motherboard tray. First, all cables have to go. We unplug them from the motherboard and carefully pull them through the bundling tray. Next, we detach all of the fan and I/O panel connection cables, which are linked to the fan control PCB unit. But be careful, the cable labeled PWM cable, the one between the fan control and the motherboard, is hardwired to the PCB and cannot be removed. Afterwards, all cables can be pulled out through the upper bundling tray, starting with the thinnest cable heads. Afterwards, we unfasten the 3 screws in the front of the motherboard tray while removing the rubber coating connecting to the case at the same time. It's going to switch sides as well after all. Lastly, the 6 final screws of the motherboard tray will follow, which can then be removed easily. Now both front screws of the PSU shroud can be unfastened, followed by the ones connecting the shroud to the HDD tray and the PSU mount. The shroud can be detached then. Subsequently, we remove the 4 lower screws of the PSU mount, followed by the 2 at the sides, so that the mount can be removed. Now we focus on the HDD tray. 6 screws at the side and 4 in the front have to be cleared. The cables of both PWM fans have to be put through the grommet and then the tray can be taken out. Before we think about reversing things, the 4 tempered glass mounts have to change sides first. For that, you are going to need a flat head screwdriver. Also, the cables of both Silentwings 3 fans have to be switched over to the other side of the case so that they can be connected to the fan control on the back and not dangle in the middle of the case. For that, the fans have to be completely detached and reattached again. Next in line is the connection between the PSU mount and the shroud, which has to be switched to the other side invertedly. 2 screws have to be removed and refit on the other side. The mount of the power adapter is held in place by 4 screws, which we take out, turn the whole thing by 180 degrees and tighten them again. This is a good opportunity to reconnect the cables to the power supply and fit the whole package onto the PSU mount, followed by the 4 screws in the bottom. The mount is attached to the case by a latching system, which allows you to install it in 3 different depths, closer to the power adapter or further away. For that, the 4 screws have to be carefully placed so that the PSU faces to the tempered glass window and the cables have enough space next to the backboard. The PSU mount is installed by simply latching it in, followed by reconnecting the power cable to the PSU. Now we reinsert the HDD tray, which gives us 2 options. Either we use the space to the front in case we want to install a radiator there, or we use the space to the motherboard. While installing, you need to make sure that the fan cables are stashed in the grommet, otherwise the screws fixing the HDD tray won't fit. Next up is the mount between the PSU cover and HDD tray, which has to switch sides. And if you intend to attach an additional fan within the shroud, you need to do so before you reinstall it. Afterwards, you can refit the PSU shroud, affix it in the front and reconnect it to the HDD tray in the back. You should also connect the shroud and the PSU mount with 2 screws. Don't worry about attaching an SSD on the top of the shroud now, you can do that at any given time later thanks to the latching system utilized there. Simply clip it in and secure it with 2 screws. Now it's time for the installation of the motherboard, the CPU, the RAM and the air coolers, which is really quite simple. First, you need to reattach the rubber connectors at the back of the frame before you insert the motherboard tray. which by the way can be installed in 3 different heights and of course inverted. Tighten the screws, install the HDDs and SSDs, connect their cables to the motherboard, install the graphics card and the water cooling system, and connect the case fans to the fan controller individually. You can connect up to 4 fans on each side of the controller and then run each side either in performance or silence mode, which directly controls the revolutions per minute of the fans. Now it's time to reconnect the I/O panel cables and optional LED cables, which all have very distinct couplings, so you can't plug them into the wrong connector inadvertently. In case you have some open questions still, you can always consult the manual, which contains a detailed overview of all the connections on the fan control in chapter 4.3. And don't forget to plug in the SATA connectors as well as the connection cables to the motherboard. If everything is in place, the front panel can be reattached by simply snapping it in, followed by the air filter and the top cover, which, minding the I/O panel, has to be installed carefully from the front. Subsequently, you need to turn the small opening cover on top of the non-window side panel by 180 degrees, lest the Be Quiet logo is all topsy-turvy. And that is it. Finish it up by reattaching the tempered glass window and congratulate yourself. You have just inverted your rig. So have lots of fun with your brand new Dark Base Pro 900 Rev 2.